Snooker fans might like to know that the Freddie Mercury tribute concert on 2 looks as though it's going to continue for at least another 45 minutes. Here on BBC One now at 9:25, the news with Michael Burke.
Labour's leadership contest is getting rougher. The contenders have clashed over tax. Their colleagues have warned them to cool it. The deposed Afghan leader is being allowed to escape as the rebels close in on Kabul. And 1 billion people worldwide watched the concert for Freddie Mercury. Good evening. The campaign for the leadership of the Labour Party became more heated and more personal today. John Smith's supporters have denied that his tax plans cost Labour the election and challenged his opponents to say which of the party's spending plans they would have kept. BRYAN GOULD supporters have said things were getting extremely adversarial. The leader of Britain's second largest union, John Edmonds, has warned the contenders not to resort to fisticuffs. And John Prescott, who's campaigning for the deputy leadership, has told them to cool it, as he put it. They risked damaging the party.
BRYAN GOULD, quietly canvassing at the Scottish TUC in Perth today, is the outsider. His offer of a radical rethink of policy and his questioning of Labour's tax plans do strike a chord in the party. So today's challenge seems designed to question his realism and his left-wing credentials. Mr Gould's camp were taken aback by the tone of the statement and called it adversarial. Mr Gould says he's not criticising Mr Smith personally.
We have to have something more than a tax policy to offer to people. I think we have to have a wider economic policy, focusing on full employment, focusing on bringing people into the wealth-creating process in a full way so that they derive the benefits. It's wealth distribution, not just wealth redistribution, that I'm really concerned about.
Mr Smith himself will visit Perth later this week, and most of the big unions will back him when the time comes. They'd prefer less talk and a smoother transition.
Colleagues, of course, in the shadow cabinet fought together the election on an agreed policy, and I hope there won't be too much search for differences between colleagues who I thought were united behind the common platform of the Labour Party.
The rank outsider in the contest, Ken Livingstone, may be out of the race altogether in little over a week's time, but he says he's the only one who can answer Mr Cook's conundrum.
We must defend the pensions increase, we must go ahead with the expansion in health and education. The cuts have to come in our military budget. We're spending 40% more of our national wealth on the military than any other West European nation.
But the man who threw down the gauntlet is unrepentant. Robin Cook denies that John Smith's plans cost Labour the election.
That is absolutely untrue, and it is clearly not consistent with what I heard in many doorsteps. What cost Labour votes was not our tax plans, but the outrageous misrepresentation of those tax plans by the Tory party and their friends in the tabloid press.
One of the contenders for the deputy leadership, John Prescott, is issuing a simple message to all the other candidates tonight. He says, cool it. He's warning that otherwise the party could be damaged. But a contest like this, born in the depths of despair after electoral defeat, is bound to generate a few bitter words.
Government officials in Afghanistan say the deposed president, Dr. Najibullah, will be allowed to leave the country. But the United Nations Special Envoy in the capital, Kabul, said negotiations over his departure were still going on. It's thought Dr. Najibullah is in hiding in the UN's building in Kabul. Afghanistan itself is now largely under the control of Islamic Mujahideen guerrillas. Kabul is surrounded to the north by the group led by one of the main guerrilla commanders, Ahmed Shah Massoud, and to the south by a rival faction backing the extremist leader Gulbuddin Hekmatyar. The latest city to fall to the guerrillas is Kandahar. The takeover is said to have been peaceful. And in the city of Jalalabad, talks are continuing about the surrender of government forces. From Kabul, Mark Tully reports.
The United Nations has not confirmed that President Najibullah will be allowed to leave Afghanistan. Even if he is, it won't help to resolve the crisis or provide a stable government. The capital, Kabul, is still apparently in control of the government run by former communists. The streets are comparatively empty, but shops are open and supplies are still getting in. But Kabul airport is controlled by soldiers and Mujahideen loyal to Massoud. Massoud is one of the few Mujahideen leaders who stayed inside Afghanistan throughout the war with the Soviet Union. His alliance now controls most of the north of the country. The foreign minister says Massoud has agreed not to try to take over the capital. But 20 miles outside Kabul, forces loyal to the Mujahideen leader Gulbuddin Hekmatyar are positioned and threatening to throw out the government, the Mujahideen government. But there's little possibility of that unless Massoud and Hekmatyar can forget their enmity. Mark Tully for BBC News in Kabul.
Here, the sister of Joseph McGee, the man police want to question about the murder of an army recruitment sergeant in Derby, has been charged with obstructing the police inquiry. McGee's brother, Patrick, said today he was considering suing the police for damages.